Hello and welcome to this primer episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish Shah. Today, I'm super excited to have with me in the studio, Kelvin Au. Kelvin is partner at Cell Capital, a thematically focused fund investing from seed to Series A in agri-food, sustainability and impact, national security, health and medical, and Web3 infrastructure in the UK, Europe, and Israel. Kelvin, it's wicked to have you here with me today.
Glad to be here.
Amazing. So in the primer episode, we'd love to hear a little bit about your background. So what brought you to where you are today? And then we'll dive into some specifics about the fund and various other things.
Fantastic. First of all, again, pleasure to be here. I think my venture journey has been an interesting one, to say the least. Being a kind of a Chinese immigrant family to the UK, I started out working in a fish and chip shop and Chinese takeaway, but knowing that there's a slightly bigger world outside of my village.
Did you sell curry with the chips? That's the only thing I want to know.
Of course, with Savoy as well.
Great.
And I studied computer science at Imperial. Always knew about computers. Always loved playing computer games, but I felt that I wasn't naturally gifted on the technical or the programming side of things, and that's why I kind of moved into more of a commercial context. And of course, you joined investment banking. Slogged my life for several years at HSBC and Credit Suisse within the TMT team. I still remember during the course of the 07, 8, 9 years, essentially, the world collapsed overnight when Lehman collapsed in 2008. I still remember when we did the largest UK tech IPO, which was Money Supermarket in 2007.
Wow.
A few months later, there were no more big IPO or M&A deals anymore. And so we very quickly pivoted from covering large cap companies to smaller companies, including VCs and their portfolio companies. And that was actually my first journey and exposure to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. It was also when I first started angel investing. Having been an advisor for a number of years in banking, I felt that, it's always good to put money where your mouth is. And that's why I left the sell side and joined a VC fund here called DFJ Esprit back then.
Yep.
Subsequently renamed to Draper.
Yep.
Subsequently renamed to Molten Ventures.
Yep.
And it was a great few years there. Did a bunch of deals across SaaS, deep tech, e-commerce, consumer. But I think, the similar thought kind of came to me as well. Being an early stage investor, in order to have a really engaging conversation with founders, early stage founders, especially anywhere from pre-seed to Series A, I think it would be a good idea to have spent some time in operations, whether you have founded a company or at least operated for a little while. And that was kind of my impetus that caused me to start my own fashion technology business back in the day. Long story short, we were running that for a number of years, about 8 years. We raised quite a bit of money, $36 million from UK and Asian investors, pivoted the business from UK to Asia, done everything wrong, looking back. But thankfully, about 5 years ago, we had the opportunity to exit the business to an Asian-based supply chain player. And since then, I was contemplating what else to do. Very fortunate that I was able to land a role at Founders Factory, having spoken to Brent a number of times in terms of, within his founders empire, where would fit. Founders Factory was one, where we essentially helped a ton of early stage technology founders to go from pre-seed to seed and seed to Series A. So I was there for several years until roughly July 2021, where I decided to move on and set up Cell. Essentially, Cell Capital, we are an investment firm focused on building and running various thematic investment strategies within the venture asset class for different sets of LPs.
Amazing. So let's talk about Cell for a second. So what stages, what geographies, what themes are you investing in at the moment?
Yes, when we first initially ideated the notion of building different strategies, we're thinking about those ideas and those verticals need to resonate with both LPs and founders, right? So those ideas and those sectors have to be very on theme in terms of where the world is going. And the first investment strategy that we launched as a result was in agri-food. Because, several years ago, we're talking about sustainable food production, food security, how can we be more sustainable.
And we're seeing that on the supermarket shelves in the UK today, right?
Indeed. Yeah. And several years ago, we've been ideating around, where can we and how can we build a venture investment strategy or venture fund focused on agri-food in Europe, and still be able to, let's say, generate a decent return for our LPs. Because back then, there weren't many funds investing in agri-food, let alone raising a big fund to deploy all that capital. It was just not possible. So it was very early days, but as a result, we raised a small fund where we have now 5 to 6 investments. We're just closing another one as we speak on the agri-food side of things. The second strategy that we launched shortly after, again, quite zeitgeist, across sustainability and impact. Sustainability, deliberately broad, but that covers anything ranging from, including climate, but ranging from ocean, circular economy, all the way through to decarbonization, net zero. And on the impact side, anything around future of education, future of work in terms of leveling up the playing field for the population through to emerging economies. And the last and the most recent one that we launched is one that is focused around deep tech for national security. And for that one, we can talk about for hours.
Well, I think we should definitely talk about it for a little while longer as well in the main pod. But so within these sort of 3 verticals, what sort of check sizes are you deploying? Kind of what stages are you operating at? What do you see the kind of total portfolio looking like over the course of the next 2-3 years?
Sure. We primarily focused on seed and Series A companies. We can follow on until Series B and C, depending. Our typical ticket size range, ranges from $250K to $2 million. We can lead or follow, depending on the situation.
Amazing. And if you were to think about 3 ventures, either in the portfolio or outside the portfolio, that are really exciting for you right now, what would they be?
I will be biased, so I will mention 3 companies from my portfolio companies. I think one that we have been really excited about, and that sits within the impact side of things, is in the African fintech space. So a company called Asalimia, where essentially they provide a fintech package, accounting, bookkeeping package for micro SMEs in East Africa at the moment, but they will penetrate across the whole of the continent. I think one thing that really excites us was that everything there is still very analog, right? And when everything is still pen and paper, you know that there is tech disruption just right down the street. I
mean, I'm from East Africa originally. I've always said that Africa over the next 5, 10, 20 years, and we know by 2050, 40% of the world's middle class is going to be living in Africa. But, technology has not yet sort of kept pace with that. And equally, I think a lot of things that we see in Africa in terms of ventures, solving real problems. Like they're not trying to create, I don't know, an e-commerce site that sells, another piece of kit to another person. They're actually solving real problems that affect hundreds of millions of people's lives on a day-to-day basis, right?
Exactly. And that's where the exciting piece is, because you can actually see the end impact of a simple piece of technology have on the whole community. And so there's one of the most exciting ones for us. They're growing like a weed, as you would expect, as people start adopting technology. We'll see how that goes. The second one that I would like to mention is one in the alternative chocolate space that we recently made an investment into, called Win-Win Food Labs. Alternative chocolate is one of their first products. I'm sure they'll move into other kind of product categories later, further down the line. But as you know, everybody loves chocolate. Myself, I love tend to kind of lean more towards the darker side of chocolate. But I think everybody would agree that chocolate is a big category, especially for FMCG groups. And what Win-Win does really interestingly is essentially they use alternative ingredients which are much more sustainably sourced, which doesn't need any deforestation, which doesn't require any child slavery or labor, in order to produce essentially chocolate profile and taste, which are very similar to 55 to 65% of cacao content.
Yep.
So fairly dark, but the taste is great and it's healthy as well. And so, we've been really excited about this proposition where actually, finally, we can not feel as guilty having chocolate, but not just about the health aspects, but the sustainability credentials as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I spent, as many of our listeners will know, sort of 10 years out in Papua New Guinea, and a lot of the cocoa that was sourced out there was via smallholders and so on. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, we always talk about the potential of technology and the potential of these products, but, one I guess, flip side to that is how do you ensure that you're not then decimating kind of small economy businesses? I guess, the point is there will always be a market for traditional chocolate as well, I would assume. But very interesting to see, how people are thinking about that space.
Yeah, but, if anything, they enable and they help the small growers. Because right now, as we know, it's the FMCG companies who are dominating and commanding and being unreasonable to a lot of those guys. But I really do believe that Win-Win is onto something here.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
And the third company, maybe slightly changing tack, is a deep tech business. Obviously, having studied computer science, that's my geek coming out. It's a computer vision based business, so it's motion capture business called Move.ai. Essentially, they are a markerless solution where they can capture anybody's motion digitally using standard phones, like your iPhones, without wearing a suit, without putting markers on your body. But the quality is the same as you were using the traditional technologies. And of course, if you're using traditional technologies where you have to buy a suit, that's very expensive. And you can't really do it outside of a studio setting. Whereas Move allows you to do it anywhere in your lounge, very cost effectively using a couple of iPhones.
Amazing. So that effectively disrupts the whole CGI kind of space.
Indeed. So I think there are many categories Move can be deployed and utilized. The first one that is fairly obvious is gaming, because right now you have the metaverse, you have Fortnite, you have Roblox. But I think what's really interesting is that from a personalization standpoint, when you're playing as a character in those games, you can mainly only personalize, let's say, your face.
Your avatar, yeah.
Your avatar. Mm-hmm. Maybe as a static image, as a profile picture, but not your digital motion. Mm-hmm. So actually, Move has democratized the asset class for digital motion as opposed to static imagery. And I think this is really exciting. As I said, gaming is one use case, but music, fashion, sports, plenty.
Yeah, amazing. And I mean, we all know that gaming, well, actually, I think a lot of people don't know that gaming is, one of the largest growing industries, is one of the largest industries in any case. But it kind of flies under the radar in terms of how people think about, the ecosystem in general. So, yeah, I can see a huge potential for disruption both there and in other categories, as you say. And so moving on, what are the technologies that you're really excited about at the moment or thinking about coming up over the next couple of years? You're allowed to say GPT-4. I'm sure you won't. But what are you keeping an eye on?
We have not made an investment in that space yet, but definitely keeping an eye on personalized telehealth or medicine. We've been seeing a lot of biotech, tech bio, however you call it, but primarily, let's say, software or AI-driven tech companies for the healthcare sector. I think there's much to disrupt there. I think with COVID, that's obviously propelled this topic and category of thinking to the fore. And I really do believe that there are ways that technology, and indeed AI could be GPT 4, 5, 6, that can indeed help doctors or clinicians to find therapies, to find ways to develop much more effective medicines for different diseases.
So I think, telehealth, telemedicine, also education, I think there's applications in that space as well that could be really interesting. But I'm really looking forward to diving into a bit more of this in the main podcast. Thank you for joining me here for the primer, and very excited to talk through everything else as we continue.
Thank you.